Fear of consequences teaches caution. It doesn't teach understanding. The approach I want to teach you about today gives you another option, one that's built on the principles of restorative justice. So restorative justice comes out of work originally used in communities and schools to repair harm between people. And instead of asking what punishment fits this, it asks what will actually repair what got broken. I think this is one of the most useful frameworks I've come across for parenting through the moments when trust takes a hit, because it holds your teen accountable without shutting the relationship down in the process. So what I'm going to do today is to walk you through 5 steps to help your teen rebuild trust after a misstep in a way that actually changes something instead of just delaying the next time it happens.
Welcome to Parents and Teens Rising, the podcast that bridges the gap between parents and teens and helps families thrive. I'm Jasmine Chandler, teen and parent coach, wilderness rites of passage guide, and founder of Guided Passages. After over 16 years of working with young people, I know how challenging and rewarding these years can be. Each week, we'll explore real conversations, practical tools, and fresh perspectives to help you connect with your teen, support their confidence, and navigate the ups and downs. Let's rise together.
Hey everyone, and welcome back into the podcast. If you are hearing this on the day it comes out, I am actually still in the backcountry with a group of high school girls on our 7-day wilderness quest. So next week, I'll hop back on to share an update about how it went, but I'm sure we're out in the woods just having a great old time. So I can't wait to tell you all about it. But for today, what I want to talk about is how to rebuild trust after your teen breaks a rule or lies or does anything really that has broken the trust you have with them. So this can also go both ways as well. If you have ever been in a spot where you've broken trust with your teen and you need to repair, the same will hold true for you as well. So hopefully you'll find a lot of gems in this episode today. All right, so imagine this. Your teen broke a rule. Maybe they lied about where they were. Maybe they snuck out or they broke curfew, or you found something on their phone they told you didn't exist. Or maybe it was even smaller than that, but it still landed really heavily because it wasn't really about the rule itself. It was about what the rule breaking said about whether you could trust what they tell you or not. So whatever it was, trust took a hit, and now you're standing in that really uncomfortable place of wondering how you move forward from here. So do you ground them? Do you take away their phone? Do you have the big serious talk? Most of us default to punishment in this moment because punishment feels like doing something and doing nothing feels like letting it slide. And look, consequences absolutely do have a place. I'm not telling you to throw out consequences altogether, but if a consequence is the only thing that happens, here's what you often end up with. A teen who gets more careful about not getting caught next time, instead of a teen who actually understands the impact of what they did and wants to do better. Those are 2 very different outcomes, and they come from 2 very different processes. So think about it from your own life for a second. If you made a mistake at work and your boss just docked your pay without ever asking what happened or what you were thinking, would you walk away understanding the impact of your mistake, or would you walk away just trying to make sure you don't get caught doing it again? Teens are no different. Fear of consequences teaches caution. It doesn't teach understanding. The approach I want to teach you about today gives you another option, one that's built on the principles of restorative justice. So restorative justice comes out of work originally used in communities and schools to repair harm between people. And instead of asking what punishment fits this, it asks what will actually repair what got broken. I think this is one of the most useful frameworks I've come across for parenting through the moments when trust takes a hit, because it holds your teen accountable without shutting the relationship down in the process. So what I'm going to do today is to walk you through 5 steps to help your teen rebuild trust after a misstep in a way that actually changes something instead of just delaying the next time it happens. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in. Step 1 is to create safety before you address what happened. So before you get into any conversation about the rule that got broken, your teen needs to know this is not an ambush. Think about how most of these conversations start in the average household. A parent finds out something happened, and they come in hot, already upset, already decided on the punishment before a single question gets asked. And your teen feels that the second you walk into the room. Their body reads the tension before you've even said a word, and their nervous system goes straight into defense mode. And once someone is in defense mode, they're not reflecting anymore. They're protecting themselves. They'll minimize, they'll get defensive, and they'll shut down, or they'll match your energy and it will turn into a fight about tone instead of a conversation about what happened. And none of that gets you anywhere close to actual accountability. So set the tone early on purpose. Something as simple as, I want to understand what happened, not just hand you a punishment, changes the entire conversation that follows. You can still be serious, you can still be clear that this matters, but you're signaling that this is a conversation, not a sentencing. And this doesn't mean there won't be a consequence at the end of this process. It means the conversation isn't only about the consequence, and it isn't the first thing out of your mouth. So safety first, then the real conversation can actually happen. If you only remember one step from this whole framework, make it this one, because everything else depends on it. Nothing that follows works if your teen is sitting across from you in full-on defense mode. And then that moves us into step 2, which is to understand what need was underneath the behavior. So every broken rule has something driving it. Nobody breaks a rule for no reason at all, even if the reason doesn't make sense to you as the parent. So ask your teen directly, what were you thinking or feeling when you decided to do this? What were you trying to get or trying to avoid? All right, so let's talk through some common ones because I think it helps to have a mental list. Maybe it was a need for autonomy because they feel like every single part of their life is monitored, tracked, and decided by somebody else. And this was one place they wanted to make their own call, even if it was the wrong one. Or maybe it was a need for approval or belonging with friends, where the fear of standing out or saying no felt bigger in the moment than the fear of getting caught. Or maybe it was a need to avoid a conflict with you that felt too hard to have honestly. So lying felt easier than telling you something they thought you would react badly to. Or maybe it was just simple impulsivity, which is developmentally normal for this age, since the part of the brain responsible for weighing long-term consequences is still very much under construction in the teen years. So you're not looking for an excuse when you ask this question. And it's worth naming that really clearly, and understanding the need doesn't erase the impact. But if you only address the behavior and never touch the need behind it, like we talked about in last week's episode, the same thing tends to happen again in some other form. You can take away the phone every time your teen breaks curfew, but if the actual driver is a need for more autonomy that never gets addressed anywhere in their life, you're just going to keep having the same fight over and over, and that's not good for anyone. Step 3 is to name the impact honestly. And this step matters, and it's easy to skip because it's the most uncomfortable one. Help your teens say out loud, in their own words, what harm they think was done by their actions. Ask them directly what they think you felt when you found out and what trust means going forward now that this happened. This is also the moment to share what happened for you because of this incident. How did it make you feel? How has trust been impacted for you? This isn't a moment for a lecture or for layering on shame, but it is a moment to get really honest about the fact that their actions had a direct impact on you and it didn't feel good. Here's the difference this makes. Picture 2 different teens after the exact same rule break. Let's say sneaking out one night. One teen says, I guess I shouldn't have done that. The other teen says, I understand now that my parents can't fully trust what I tell them for a while after this, and that it's going to take some time to earn that trust back. Or, I get that my mom was up all night worrying about me and in a full panic because I didn't come home all night or call to let her know where I was. So those 2 responses sound similar on the surface, but they come from completely different places. The first one is compliance, and the second one is actual accountability. And it's the second one that leads to real lasting change. So this isn't about piling on guilt or making your teen feel small. There's an important line between accountability and shame, and it's worth knowing the difference. Shame says you're bad. Accountability says this had an impact and you're capable of understanding that impact. One shuts a teenager down, the other builds their capacity to actually care about the people around them. Your job in this step is to ask the questions that lead them to accountability and then to let them sit with the answer for a minute instead of rushing to fill the silence yourself. All right, and that moves us into step number 4, which is to co-create the repair plan together. So don't hand your teen the plan. Build it with them. This is one of the biggest shifts from a traditional punishment model where the parent decides the consequences and the teen simply receives it. In a restorative model, you ask what they think would help rebuild trust. You ask what they're willing to do differently. You ask what they could actually do, not just say, that would show they mean it. This might look like more transparency for a set period of time, like sharing their location or checking in at agreed times when they're out with friends. It might look like a specific action, like being the one to bring up the topic again in a week on their own to show they're actually still thinking about it and not just waiting for the whole thing to blow over. It might mean writing something down or having a follow-up conversation with the person who was affected if someone outside your household was involved. Or it might look like a sincere apology and offering to do some extra chores or projects around the house for the next month. The specific plan matters less than the fact that they had a hand in building it. Think about the difference between a rule someone else imposed on you versus a commitment you made yourself. You follow through on the second one differently because you have ownership over it. A plan your teen helped create is a plan they're far more likely to actually follow because it isn't something being done to them. It's something they are choosing. All right, and our final step, number 5, is to follow through and revisit it. Trust does not rebuild in one conversation, no matter how good that conversation was. It rebuilds through repeated small moments of follow through over time. And this step is where a lot of families drop the ball because the big emotional conversation happened, everyone felt better, and then nobody circles back to it again. But do check back in on the plan. If your teen agreed to check in at a certain time, notice out loud when they do it. A simple, "Hey, I noticed you texted me right when you said you would. I really appreciate that," does a lot more for rebuilding trust than you might think because it shows them the effort is actually being seen, not just expected. And if they slip somewhere along the way, address it without acting like the whole plan failed. One slip doesn't undo the whole process. If you treat every small setback as proof that nothing has changed, you teach your teen that trying isn't worth it unless they're perfect. And that's a discouraging lesson for anyone, let alone a teenager still learning how to follow through on commitments. Remember to name the character that they are showing in these moments when they're rebuilding the trust, not just the fact that they're being compliant. So saying something like, "It takes real courage to look at this honestly and do the work to fix it," reminds them that this process was about who they are, not just what they did wrong. And that's the piece that turns a rule break into a growth moment instead of just a memory of getting in trouble. And it also helps remind them that the behavior that they had is not who they are. They are not a liar. They are not a mess up. They are not whatever it is. That's not who they are. Their behavior was a behavior. It's something that they did. It's a mistake that they made. It doesn't represent their character. It doesn't represent who they are. It just represents a poor choice. And we all make poor choices as humans, and that's how we learn. And so we don't want to tie this behavior to their identity. This was something that they experienced and something that they're learning from and something that they're changing and growing from. So really reinforcing that they have a beautiful character and that all the work that they're doing right now really reinforces those beautiful qualities that they have, and that this is something that they can recover from and that they can be forgiven from. All right, let's go ahead and move into our wrap up. So rebuilding trust with your teen isn't about finding the perfect punishment. It's about creating safety before the conversation starts, understanding the need underneath the behavior, naming the impact honestly, building the repair plan together instead of handing it down, and following through over time instead of letting the conversation be the whole process. This approach takes longer than handing out a consequence and calling it done, and it asks more of you as a parent because it requires patience in a moment when you probably don't feel very patient. But it builds something a punishment alone never can. What you end up with is a teen who actually understands impact instead of just avoiding consequences, and a relationship that comes out on the other side stronger. Okay, so I want to leave you with this. Every teenager is going to break a rule at some point. That's not a reflection of bad parenting or a bad kid. It's part of growing up and testing boundaries, which is actually a normal and even necessary part of adolescence. What matters far more than the rule break itself is what happens in the conversation afterward, because that's the part your teen will actually carry forward with them. And if you're in the middle of a trust repair moment with your teen right now, I hope these steps give you a place to start today. And if this episode helped you see things differently, please do share it with another parent who needs to hear it. All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next week once we're off the trail. Hope you all have a beautiful rest of your day. Talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.
Did you enjoy the show? If so, would you take 30 seconds to subscribe so you don't miss an episode? Leave a quick review so more parents can find these conversations, and maybe even share this episode to your stories. And if you want to connect, please send me a DM on Instagram. I'm at jasmine.guidedpassages, and that's Jasmine with a Y. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll talk to you next week.